guys, welcome back to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today I have a delicious vegetarian dish for you. I'm going to show you how to make Melitzanokeftedes. That just translates to eggplant meatballs. Now there's no meat in these meatballs. These are 100% vegetarian. They're not vegan because they do have cheese and eggs in there, but they are totally delicious. You can turn these into a meal or use them as an appetizer. If you serve them just fried up like this, or you could even bake them actually, or bake them in your air fryer. But you can just serve them like this with some marinara sauce or some deaky and make them a first course or an appetizer. Or I'm going to show you at the end of this video how to turn this into a delicious meal with tomato sauce and feta. Just serve some pasta on the side or some nice toasted bread and you've got a hearty, delicious meal ready in really no time. Let's go over the ingredients so we can start. I have some oil warming through over medium heat over here to fry the meatballs with. I also have a little bit of oil that I'm going to brush on the ones that I'm going to bake, some salt, a garlic clove, crushed red pepper flakes, black pepper. Over here we have some panko breadcrumbs and some shredded Parmesan cheese. I have some dried oregano, 2 eggplants that I've just pierced all around with a fork. I brush them with a little bit of olive oil and bake them at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes or until they get nice and soft like this. I have an egg, some fresh mint and parsley, and some sliced scallions. So the eggplants are now cool enough to handle. All I'm going to do is I'm going to slice them down the center to remove all of that flesh that's in there. I'll also cut off the end. So I'm just going to scoop out all of the flesh onto a cutting board because I'm just going to finely chop it, or roughly chop it actually. And I'm just going to chop this up. This is going to help mash it. And I'm just going to scoop this all up and put it in the mixing bowl. I'm also going to finely chop the mint and the parsley and put that into the bowl as well. Smells so fresh. Next, I'm going to add the sliced scallions. I'm just going to grate the garlic over the microplane. A little bit of dried oregano, some crushed red pepper flakes for heat, and that's totally optional. You can leave them out if you don't like them. Black pepper and some salt. So I'm just going to mix this all up with a fork. You could definitely add some sun-dried tomatoes in here if you wanted to. Roasted red pepper would be nice too. I'm keeping them very classic with these ingredients. These are the classic Greek ingredients. But you could definitely dress this up with whatever your favorite fillings are, your favorite flavors. Now before I add the egg, I'm going to go in and take a taste to see if it needs a little bit more seasoning, like some salt and pepper. Make sure it's really well mixed first. It's perfect, doesn't need any more. I put 1.5 teaspoons of salt in there because there's 1.5 cups of panko breadcrumbs and the eggplant was not seasoned at all, so that's good enough for me. You can add less if you don't like it that salty. I'm just gonna beat the egg before I add it in there and just mix everything all together. So I'm gonna make 2 patties so that way I can bake them and show you how they come out once they're baked. And the rest I'm gonna form into little meatballs so that we can fry them and I can show you both ways. So if you're making the patties, and these do make delicious vegetarian burgers, you would take about 1/4 cup, or really as big as you want to make it, and just form it into a ball first, just like that, and then pat it down. And before it goes into the baking tray, I have some panko breadcrumbs. They're unseasoned. There's lots of flavor in this already. If you want to, you can throw some Parmesan cheese into the breadcrumbs too. That would take that flavor up a little bit more. And I'm going to put it on the baking tray. Let's make 1 more like that. The oven is already preheated to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm just going to let these bake in there for about 20-25 minutes or until they're nice and golden and just cook through. And I'm just going to brush the tops with a little bit of oil. If you have a little spray bottle, you can spray the tops with some oil too. I'm going to pop these in the oven. So the rest I'm just going to form into little meatballs. So I have some panko breadcrumbs that I'm going to roll them in. But first I have this little small mini ice cream scoop that helps get them into the perfect size. You want them about the size of a golf ball. And first I'm going to form them and then I'm going to dip them into or roll them into the panko breadcrumbs. So this makes about 25 meatballs. So I'm going to take each one and I'm going to roll it in these panko breadcrumbs. You could use any breadcrumbs you have. If you make your own, if you watched my video and you started making your own, you could use those instead of the panko. So I run through breadcrumbs so quickly. So I'm just going to do 4 or 5 at a time because I do not want the oil to be overcrowded, because then the temperature is going to drop and then it's going to absorb all of that oil and grease, and these, instead of being crisp and delicious and light, they're going to be loaded with oil, and they're going to be oily and just soggy and gross. So make sure that you do not overcrowd the pan. I'm going to carefully drop these in the oil, and I'm going to let them cook until they're nice and golden all around. It's going to take about 4 minutes or so. Make sure you have a plate lined with some paper towels, so that way they can go directly onto the plate, onto the paper towel, so it can drain any of the excess oil. So the meatballs and the patties are ready. What I did for the patties is after 25 minutes, they still were not golden on top, so I did turn on the broiler for about 3 to 4 minutes just so they can become nice and golden all around the top. And let me show you what the inside of these wonderful eggplant meatballs look like. Okay, so before we take a bite of this, you can definitely serve these just as is. The patties can be served in a pita sandwich with some deaky sauce, even tahini sauce, or if you like marinara, and just serve them as a main course. And then the eggplant meatballs can be also served as an appetizer with some marinara sauce or deaky or whatever your favorite dip is. So to make the sauce for this, it's almost going to be like a saganaki. What we're using is, we're going to make a quick homemade marinara sauce. So I have some pureed canned tomatoes. Now you can use already store-bought marinara sauce if you have it. I didn't have any on hand, and it's so simple to make it from scratch. I'm going to season it with a little bit of dried oregano, some crushed red pepper flakes, a little bit of garlic. This is granulated garlic. And then we're going to season with some salt and a tiny pinch of sugar, because canned tomatoes are very acidic. You could use honey instead if you like. And we're going to put this over medium-high heat, and we're going to bring it to a boil so it could thicken up a little bit. And I'm also going to drizzle in a little bit of olive oil. Now season this however you want. If you have fresh basil leaves, go ahead and use fresh. I have some dried basil here. I'm going to throw some dried basil in here. You could even leave it all out, and right when you put the keftedes or the eggplant meatballs in there, you can sprinkle in some scallions. Really, it's all up to you how you want to make this. Give it a nice mix. Let this cook for about 8 minutes or so it can thicken up just a little bit. Okay, so once the sauce reduces a little bit, it takes about 6 to 8 minutes. Go ahead and carefully drop as many as the meatballs in, or the eggplant meatballs in, as you want. That looks good. I'm also going to crumble some feta cheese in there. So if you've ever had shrimp saganaki, this is kind of like a play on that. I also have a meatball saganaki recipe that I will link up in the card section, so you guys can go check those recipes out as well. Now I'm going to put this in the oven just like this, with all that creamy feta in there. And I'm going to turn the broiler element on. I'm going to let this cook in there until the whole thing is nice and golden. And that should take about a few minutes. I'll show you what it looks like as soon as it comes out. So the eggplant meatballs took 8 minutes under the broiler. Now the oven rack that the pan went on was in the center of the oven. It was not very close to the element, the heating element, because then they're going to burn. So after 4 minutes, just go in and just flip the meatballs over into the sauce, and then let them cook another 4 minutes underneath the broiler. The sauce is going to thicken, the feta cheese is going to melt, and it's just going to be absolutely delicious. This is what they look like when they're done. Beautiful, thick, rich sauce that looks like it took forever to make, but it was just ready in under 10 minutes. Let me show you what the baked patties look like, because I forgot to cut into them so I could show you. They're not at all greasy, and look at how cheesy they are inside. Those would be a nice, healthy alternative to this meal, and you could definitely put these also into the sauce or bake the meatballs in there. You can get creative with this. I'm going to go in and take a bite. I'm going to go in and take a bite of the fried ones. So much flavor. The exterior is perfectly crispy. The inside is nice and moist. And eggplant is a pretty meaty vegetable. The herbs make it so nice and refreshing. It is the perfect appetizer, a delicious meal. Here's one recipe done 3 different ways. You can go on over to the website, www.dimitrasdishes.com, print everything out, make it. Let me know how you're going to make it in the comment section down below. And also post any recipe requests of things that you want to learn how to make. I'll share it as soon as I can. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me today. I will see you all next time. Yes, us.